Happy New Year and welcome to FemVids Ultimo. I'm Sean Rolls.
And I'm Alicia Evans. And before we deep dive into 2018, join us for a recap of November and December 2017.
The end of each year is always a catalytic time for civil society, as many mark at least a few, if not the whole, of the 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence.
But before we get into that, what's been happening with Women's Weather Watch?
Women's Weather Watch.
We went regional with Women's Weather Watch in 2017 with several broadcast campaigns across the Pacific.
Supported by the Australian Government, ActionAid Australia and the International Women's Development Agency, Women's Weather Watch played on radio stations in Fiji, Solomon Islands, Tonga and Vanuatu.
Our radio campaign struck a chord with mothers and grandmothers in Fiji who are excited to hear information about women's roles in organising their families and communities when it comes to natural disasters.
And for the stations outside of Fiji that aired the messages, Women's Weather Watch was the sole preparedness campaign. Timely, considering the Pacific is in the midst of a cyclone season.
And not forgetting the ongoing threats posed by other natural hazards like volcanic eruptions that struck Vanuatu in 2017.
With lessons learned there, Capital FM 107, through our Women's Weather Watch campaign, not only highlighted women as first responders, but helped bridge the information gap on disaster preparedness.
Ahead of the campaigns, FemLink Pacific also launched the 5th editions of Heroines.
Again, with the preparedness message, Sharon Bhagwan-Rolls explains.
If you look at the current edition of Heroines, just to give you an idea of where the storyline is going with this one, a number of the recommendations remain consistent in terms of the promotion of equality, disability rights, protection with dignity. But what we thought we would do is, because more and more we're having conversations about Women's Weather Watch, that we've actually written about Women's Weather Watch as well, because as we heard today from the presentation from NDMO, they are also learning about public emergency broadcasting systems, interoperable communication systems, how does community radio work. So that's the underlying story, together with participation for preparedness. So once again, the hero aunties who feature our characters are featured, but you will also see that it talks about how Women's Weather Watch works from the SMS messaging, and also what some of you are doing, we know, when you receive the message. So that's the story behind this edition of Heroines, together with our set of recommendations as well.
And that was FemLink Pacific's Executive Producer Director, Sharon Bhagwan-Rolls, speaking during the launch of Edition 5 of Heroines, during our second Women's Weather Watch National Consultation 2017.
There's a whole podcast about the launch, so check the links in the video description for that.
During the consultation, we not only celebrated, but got to work, including producing another season of Radio with Pictures coming soon, as well as 16 days Instagram messages with our rural women leaders of all diversities.
These everyday heroines define peace for them and their communities, and you can watch each message on FemLink's Instagram account, taking back the tech and claiming their communication rights.
At the same time as the videos were going out, the spirit of collective action, outreach and celebration was being felt all across the Pacific.
This was embodied by members of the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict Pacific Network through a series of peace education activities in the Solomon Islands, Tonga, Vanuatu and Fiji, supported by the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency.
Across the network, women were leading the way in engaging in dialogue with communities of all diversities to provide the opportunity, time and space to unpack and define what peace and a life free from all forms of violence means.
In the Solomon Islands, Voice Blanc Mera Solomon organized for women with disabilities to come together with the media to share their experiences in Malaita province.
In Tonga, the Talitha Project organized a girls' camp where, together with their mentors and parents, celebrated and shared their visions of a future that they want to contribute to. including through the use of creative storytelling using illustrations and symbols.
In Vanuatu, people from all walks of life stopped by a booth set up by the Vanuatu Young Women for Change at the Vanuatu 2017 Pacific Games.
In Fiji, Transcend Oceania hosted a Mothers and Daughters Dialogue at FemLink Pacific's Community Media Center, examining the generational gaps and differences that they experience on a daily basis.
The 16 days reminded us that we cannot end violence without telling our truth or defining our peace, both of which require a platform, a communication space that enables our stories to be visible and taken into account as nations carve their own path towards development.
And for the GPAC Pacific Network, peace education programs with communities can enable Pacific people to come together to work towards creating the change needed for violence-free homes, communities, and countries.
Change that includes everyday people discussing the power that underlies structural discrimination or the root causes of violence on our streets.
So continue to follow our updates or catch up on any of these stories via FemLink Pacific's website or subscribe to our bi-monthly e-bulletin.
Hey Sean,
Yeah?
guess what?
What?
Lightning
The Fiji Young Women's Forum held a Young Women in Politics training which included reaffirming the right to vote and highlighting the importance of young women's participation in all forms of decision making.
The international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, ICANN, got a Nobel Prize, recognizing their critical work as a global network in achieving the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons.
And find out how the Pacific envisions the journey to equal rights in a new FemLink Pacific short film, Sisters of the Pacific Ocean, Gender Equality 2030.
We covered the Oceania Sevens women's teams with a critical eye on the gender gap in rugby.
And that's it for this edition of FemVids Ultimo.
Continue the conversation via our online media platforms, send an email or give us a good old-fashioned phone call if there's something happening in your community.
And if you're in Suva or Lombasa, tune in to your Women's Weather Watch station, FemTalk 89 FM, or catch up with our podcast on SoundCloud. Happy 2018 once again. I'm Sean Rawls.
And I'm Alicia Evans. See you next time.